Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got some. Let's see. There we go. Hazardous weather graphic. The flood advisory continues there for the Kenai Peninsula along the Kenai River there. From Ski Lac Lake to Sterling, and that's out for tonight into at least midday tomorrow. And also there's a high wind warning out for St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait coast due to the big storm that's currently coming into the western Bering and Aleutians this afternoon. That's going to move into the Bering Sea and then northeast and push the front northward as well as westward. And that'll bring a good shot of wind into not only the entire Bering Sea and the Aleutians, but also the southwest coast, and especially St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast. And that's out from midnight Tuesday night until 6 p.m. Monday afternoon for southeast winds gusting to 65 miles per hour across that time period. And from there, no other watches, warnings, or advisories are out anywhere else in the state. Marine-wise, though, there are storm warnings out with that big storm coming in. Otherwise, we have a trough, had the front move through the panhandle last evening or last night, and good southwest flow, strong southwest flow, keeping a fair amount of rain going today, with actually another couple of troughs moving into the area, broken up, or it's kind of a broken cellular cloud pattern there behind the front in the colder air aloft. But when that moves on shore, it interacts with the terrain and kind of becomes a general area of just rainfall. Like Yakutat picked up about 1.5 inches of precipitation rain in the last 12 hours, but a little more varied and variable as far as rainfall amounts go across the remainder of the southeast coast. Sitka had about 0.4 of an inch, while Juneau picked up just 0.05 of an inch, and Klawock had about 1/10 of an inch down to the south, with a heavier rain band down across the Queen Charlotte's now out of the area. Otherwise, you can see clearing occurred. Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, getting into some clearing today. Still some lingering clouds, though. But right up Cook Inlet into the central interior, all the way up to the eastern Brooks Range, kind of a narrow band of some clearing. And not too bad along the south side of the Alaska Peninsula. Eastern Aleutians to the Pribilofs also seeing some clearing skies today to go along with the gusty north and northwest winds that were going on out there. Starting to come down now over the eastern Aleutians as the higher pressure ridge axis shifts eastward there from the central Aleutians over the area. So still a little breezy currently. St. Paul and Unalaska seeing gusts 25 to 30 miles an hour after seeing gusts, higher gusts earlier on. But Hooper Bay this afternoon, north-northwest gusts 40 miles an hour and gusts 46 miles an hour at King Cove there on the Alaska Peninsula. Was some showers, but rainfall amounts out that way pretty light, just a few hundredths of an inch, as was much of the western interior northward. Kotzebue had about 15 hundredths of an inch of precipitation today, and also some of that moisture backing into the upper Tanana Valley from the Copper River Basin area. That brought some rain on the north side of the Alaska Range. Tok had about 1/10 of an inch. Delta Junction picked up 15 hundredths of an inch. Otherwise, like Tanana just had 1/100th of an inch. And light snow up along the Arctic coast and north slope all the way down to Anatuvik was pretty light, with just barely maybe 1/10 of an inch of snowfall up that way. Temperatures near or below freezing from the Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast. A little warmer on the west side there. And mixed rain and snow showers, Seward Peninsula, depending on your elevation, time of day. Like I said, it was rain at Kotzebue this afternoon. Then a kind of a break there, St. Lawrence Island, with the higher pressure building in just to your west and southwest, and then several weak troughs dropping down in that northwest flow from the southwest coast to the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians. Showers tapering off and ending here for the Pribilofs and eastern Aleutians, taking a little longer for the Alaska Peninsula. Low pressure shifting up and weakening over the Kenai Peninsula area. Again, some sunshine for the Cook Inlet area today, right on up into the eastern interior. Just some isolated showers along the Alaska Range and North Gulf Coast. Heaviest precipitation east of Cordova, there, Cape Yakutat over to Yakutat and a little to the south, and then it tapers off. That's where they had the heaviest rainfall, as I mentioned, 1.5 inches at Yakutat in the last 12 hours, and lighter amounts as you head on down the southeast coast. And then some clearing over Kodiak Island, clearing out in the central Aleutians. And on the edge of the chart there, you can see the pretty active front bringing gale force winds. The winds on the increase now, pretty light over the central Aleutians, and but increasing there for Shimei and Attu. And you'll see for tonight, tight gradient with that front. The low comes onto the chart here at 971 millibars, and a pretty tight gradient in advance of the front. So storm warnings out for the western Aleutians, western Bering Sea. Gales advancing eastward there to probably get to Adak late tonight, as well as the rainfall. Doesn't quite make it to the Pribilofs. High pressure shifting eastward there in the Bering Sea. Make for light winds and some clearing tonight from actually the eastern Aleutians. Across the Pribilofs up to the St. Lawrence Island area, winds diminishing on the southwest coast, as well as the Alaska Peninsula. And over the south central Alaska, not much change. Still a chance of showers, Prince William Sound with that lingering low there. Just now over Resurrection Bay, chance of showers, Copper River Basin. Depending on your elevation, rain or snow. And that same pattern there over the west central interior, chance of rain or snow showers back along that trough, back up toward the Selawik Valley area, Kotzebue and Ambler. Koyukuk Valley basically dry, and then you got some light snow continuing, or flurries up from the crest of the Brooks Range across the north slope. Now mostly shifting to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, drier along the central and west side, high pressure drying it out on the western Arctic coast. And yet another trough swings into the southeast coast. Southern areas will see just some shower activity, but periods of light rain, light fog, or light rain, drizzle, or fog, or any combination of the three there for the central and northern southeast coast, as well as the North Gulf Coast. And for tomorrow, that big low pressure area creeping eastward there over the northwest Bering now at 968 millibars. Big area of storm and gale force winds in advance of that front with moderate to heavy rain as well. Rain increasing with gale force winds into the Pribilofs and possibly even storm force winds reaching St. Matthew Island late tomorrow. And there are storm warnings for the western Aleutians until the front passes tomorrow. And definitely gales, high or full gales for the central Aleutians, and winds will be on the increase along with chances of rain for the Fox Islands. Otherwise, high pressure building into the southwest interior. Partly sunny skies, partly to mostly sunny skies, light winds drying out for the Alaska Peninsula with some sunshine and clearing on the Pacific side. Another nice day for Kodiak Island with light winds, and some showers linger over the southern panhandle. A little bit of rain in the north with yet another trough coming in on that strong southwest flow aloft. Scattered showers, Copper River Basin of rain or snow, and that extends all the way up to about the Brooks Range area, but high pressure near the Arctic Ocean, or near the Arctic coast, central Arctic coast, actually over the Arctic Ocean there as well. Keeps the north slope dry as well as the Arctic coast, lingering flurries over toward Barter Island area, but nothing significant. And then for the outlook on Wednesday, shaping up like this, that front weakens, but it'll bring definitely gale force winds into the southwest coast. And again, a high wind warning out St. Lawrence Island through 6 p.m. Wednesday. Start to see the winds come down Wednesday afternoon, but the front still to your south and the tight gradient from St. Lawrence Island up to the Bering Strait there for those 65-mile-an-hour wind gusts with mostly rain in the precipitation. Any snow that falls won't be of much at all, probably melt as it falls. Strong westerly winds on the south side of that 967 millibar low there over the southern Bering Sea, just north of the Aleutians, but still pretty brisk over the Aleutians. But looks like definitely gale force sustained 40 or 30 to 45 knot winds there with quite a widespread area of rain and fog, and rain heavy at times moving into Kodiak, and rain and wind into the southwest interior, into the Kuskokwim Valley, and increasing rain for Cook Inlet, southern Kenai Peninsula, as it stays basically damp from the North Gulf Coast. Panhandle drying out, high pressure building in, chance of some scattered showers. And for the lows tonight for the southeast coast, mid to upper 40s there, mid 30s for the Copper River Basin and much of south central Alaska, Susitna Valley, and Kuskokwim Valley as well, dropping in the lower to mid 30s out toward the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta to St. Lawrence Island, and below freezing Seward Peninsula, mid 30s for the Tanana Valley, lower to mid 20s Brooks Range, North Slope, and upper 20s for the Arctic coast. Highs tomorrow, lower 30s Arctic coast and North Slope, upper 20s to lower 30s for the Brooks Range. In the 40s south of the mountains, though, to upper 40s the Tanana Valley, and near 40 out over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta to the coast, upper 40s for the Pribilofs, and mid 50s for the Panhandle, lower 50s south central Alaska, mostly in the 40s for the Copper River Basin. And that'll be followed by lows Wednesday morning, again in the 20s, North Slope, Arctic coast, Brooks Range, as well as the Kobuk Valley and the northwest interior, upper 20s to lower 30s for the Tanana Valley, and then highs in the 40s in the central interior, lower 30s in the Arctic coast, and 50s along the Panhandle.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, we've got another batch of IFR pushing into the western Bering Sea with that next storm system there to about, with the marginal VFR making its way in toward AKwx late in the afternoon. Marginal for the central and eastern Aleutians. Unalaska Island looks to be VFR as well as the Pribilofs, and also the Alaska Peninsula. All the eastern Bering Sea up through the Bering Strait tomorrow morning, VFR, including the northwest coast and across the Noatak, northern Kobuk and Koyukuk valleys. To the north there, North Slope IFR, eastern Beaufort Sea Coast IFR, and IFR pretty widespread there in the central interior, all the way from the eastern border there to out toward Kotzebue Sound, Selawik, and then southward across the Kuskokwim Valley, Alaska Range, into Iliamna Lake in the northeast Bristol Bay area. VFR, Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, and most of the Copper River Basin, at least the western 2/3, but IFR, portion of the North Gulf Coast, the Panhandle or VFR, with some marginal VFR right along the coast. And for the afternoon, stays VFR across the Panhandle tomorrow with the marginal VFR from Yakutat in across Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, stays VFR, Cook Inlet, up into the Madanuska-Susitna Valley, and some of the Copper River Basin. IFR holding there over the eastern interior, some VFR, northern Koyukuk Valley area, but marginal VFR for the most part over the Brooks Range, Arctic Coast, North Slope, Kuskokwim Valley. Then it breaks out to VFR with higher pressure building in from the eastern Bering Sea. So from the northwest coast, across the Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, all the way down to the Alaska Peninsula, pretty good VFR. And then the IFR with that storm advancing in toward the Pribilofs and right across eastern Aleutians from Amchitka to Nikolsky. And for Wednesday morning, that whole area pushes right onto the southwest coast there, drags across the Alaska Peninsula and Unalaska Island. And Pribilofs become marginal with IFR there along the northwest coast, down across Selawik, Noatak, and Kobuk valleys, and then kind of meandering eastward there across the upper Yukon Valley, expanding in splits, with one portion going down into the 40-mile country there to the northern Copper River Basin, Talkeetnas, eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range and southern Cook Inlet. Marginal VFR, Prince William Sound, stays VFR over the southeast coast. And for Wednesday afternoon, stays VFR again for the Panhandle there with marginal VFR, Yakutat turns into IFR for Cape Yakataga, Montague Island, Prince William Sound there, over towards Seward, Portage, maybe, definitely passes Canal, maybe Portage. And turning an arm there in Madanuska Valley looked pretty good, as well as Anchorage and Palmer Eagle River areas, VFR, but marginal surrounding the area there. And VFR, West Central Interior, IFR, North Slope Arctic Coast, and Upper Yukon Valley. And IFR pushes farther in across the southwest interior and up to the Seward Peninsula. And for passes, Anatuvik and Atigan, both marginal tomorrow for the Lake Clark and Merrill. IFR are becoming marginal in the afternoon. Same trend for Rainy. Windy, marginal VFR at times throughout the day. Isabel, IFR with marginal VFR in the southern entrance, be lower conditions north side. And Metesta, IFR becoming marginal or so. And Tanita, VFR. Portage, marginal VFR. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet, right up to the southern slopes of the central Brooks Range there at the surface, about on the south side of the Brooks Range. And then 4,000 feet southern Alaska, and about 2,000 to 4,000 over the Panhandle. And then the warm air advancing northward there. Pretty good warm air mass, 12,000 plus foot freezing levels into the western Aleutians with that southerly flow. And icing for tomorrow, that pushes eastward, west to east. Pretty good clip there, pushing in toward the Pribilofs late in the afternoon, dragging across the central Aleutians. And areas of less significant icing there for the Panhandle, North Gulf Coast, and up over the interior. Looking at the jet stream, strong jet there with that system way out west, 175 knots. That converts to about a shade over 200 miles per hour. So a very strong jet with that system. Otherwise, northwest winds coming over a flat ridge there, about 100 to 105 knots over the eastern Bering along the southwest coast, and then it dives southward, back up, and 140 knots across the southern Panhandle. 9,000 feet, 90 knot winds there with that system out west. Otherwise, light and variable over the interior with high pressure in the north, weak lows in the Gulf, and for 3,000 feet, 85 knot winds in the Aleutians, and turbulence-wise, moderate chop there advancing eastward across the Aleutians, otherwise light to isolated moderate chop along the southwest coast, Kodiak Island, and northern Panhandle, as well as the Seward Peninsula.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us today is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thank you for joining us, Eric.
My pleasure, Dave.
Thank you. And you're joining us here to talk a little bit more about satellites and how satellites work, and especially one neat feature that's working over Alaska right now. What is that?
Well, there's a lot of weather satellites and a lot of instruments on these satellites, and there are new generations going up and new instruments. This includes something called the day-night band, which is not a cover band at the local bar, but it's a new satellite that is very useful, especially here in Alaska, especially in the winter.
In the wintertime, yeah, that makes it a little bit hard to use some of the normal tools that we associate with weather satellite imagery.
Right. You know, one of the classic weather satellite instruments is just visible light. What would the human eye see if you were riding on a weather satellite yourself and looked down and it was black and white? You'd see the clouds reflecting the sunlight. And we've got an example from the Pacific Ocean. There's a geostationary satellite, and we can see that the eastern side of the image is in daylight. The western side, it's night over there, so you don't see anything because there's no sunlight over there. And visible imagery, it's very intuitive. You see the clouds just like you see them standing on the ground, but now you're a satellite seeing them from above. But the problem is, what about the night side of the planet? How do you track the storms? How do you know where the rain is, the snow, the weather, if you can't see the clouds? And that's why, just like a television can change from one channel to another, or a radio can change stations, satellites can change the frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum that they're looking at. We can go to infrared instead of visible light. You know, it's heat energy. You can see heat, and we've got another satellite picture from the same time, same satellite, out over the Pacific Ocean. That's the infrared side, and we're seeing temperature there. And even at night, when there's no light, everything still has a temperature.
So we're sensing something with a thermometer instead of perhaps the visible side of that, is what you're saying?
That's right. On this depiction, colder features are lighter shades, warmer features are dark. And so clouds tend to be colder than the ground. Clouds are higher in the atmosphere, it's cooler. And so that very same image on the western or the left-hand side of the globe, now we can see the clouds there, even though it's nighttime, because we're seeing the temperatures. And one nice feature is that tropical storm there, just in the middle of the northern hemisphere there, hurricane or typhoon, depending on...
That's that swirly part that we see in the middle of the image?
There you go. You can even see the eye on it there, especially in the infrared image. So we've got two kinds of imagery there from the same satellite, different instruments, you know, different channels like on a television, visible and infrared. You know, it turns out there's no one magic tool. Each has its strengths, each has its flaws, weaknesses. The visible is nice, it's intuitive, it's easy to understand, but doesn't work at night. Infrared is nice, it works at night, you can see temperatures, but there is a catch. What if your clouds and the nearby bare ground or open water, what if those were about the same temperature?
Oh, that's going to be hard to figure out what's going on.
If you can only see temperature and you have two features that are the same temperature, they will look the same. You won't be able to tell. They're camouflaged. This happens, especially, it can happen around Alaska, especially over the ocean when you have low clouds that are the same temperature as the open water.
That happens quite a bit in Alaska.
We have an example. Now, this is from a different geostationary satellite. It's down over the Atlantic Ocean. Look in the South Atlantic. In infrared, we've highlighted in a yellow circle there. There's some patches of clouds, but it looks like there's a clear area in the middle of that image. That's the infrared look. But let's take a look at the visible channel, and we can see there's a stripe of clouds across the middle of that circle that is only visible in the visible. The trick here is that those are low clouds of about the same temperature as the surrounding ocean. So from an infrared point of view, where you're seeing temperature, the clouds in the water nearby are the same temperature, they look the same. It's only on the visible that you can see what stands out as the actual imagery. Two tools, each have their strengths and weaknesses. Can we combine them? That's where the day-night band comes in. It's a super sensitive visible sensor that can actually see by moonlight. It can even see the aurora. And in Alaska, we have long winter nights. We can use that day-night band. Here's an example from that storm that blew the Kullik drilling platform ashore near Kodiak Island in December back in 2012. This image is right near when that storm happened, and it's in the middle of the night in December.
But this looks like visible imagery.
Looks like daytime imagery. It's amazing. That sensor can take any little bit of moonlight and just make the most of it. And we can see so much detail. Even in the northern part of the image there, you can see some aurora up there. The northern lights
That's that band that goes across the Arctic slope?
You got it. That's the northern lights. We're seeing black and white image here, so you don't get the green or the purple colors there. But that is the aurora. There's another example of the day-night band, and this is from January of 2013. It's about 4 in the morning, and this is a snapshot from Weather Service software. And we can even see in the middle of the image, there's the lights of Fairbanks and North Pole over to Eielson Air Force Base. Anchorage and Matsu lights, city lights, are evident as well. We can see, even though it's 4 in the morning in January, there is no sunlight to be had, that just enough moonlight is available that this sensor can see that. So we're trying to solve that puzzle where visible light is good, but only during the daytime. IR is good at night, but you can't see the difference between clouds and ground sometime. The day-night band is an attempt to do the best of both with one tool. And it's brand new for Alaska here, and we're hoping to use it in the forecast process and help predict storms, weather patterns, to help get good forecasts for people.
Okay, another tool in the weather toolkit for meteorologists in Alaska and researchers worldwide. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us today. And you can learn more about GINA and the day-night band by going to the web address that you see on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's coastal water forecast, actually for tomorrow. Today's forecast for Tuesday. For the southeast coast, southwest winds 10 to 15 knots. The entire stretch of the coastline there, a little more southerly up on the extreme north coast. Seas running 10 feet, pretty uniform for sea heights. And central northern inside waters, south winds 15 knots with 3-foot seas, and south winds at 10 knots there with 2-foot seas for Clarence Strait. And actually a couple light wind days coming up for the southeast coast, even lighter on Wednesday. Variable winds for the coast there, 5 to 10 knots, seas now down to 6 feet, mostly southeast 10 to 15 on the north coast. And variable winds at 5 or north to 5 knots for Stevens Passage, north to 10 knots, Lynn Canal. And Clarence Strait, northwest at 10 with seas 2 feet. Prince William Sound tomorrow, northeast winds on the light side at 10 knots with 2-foot seas, east 20 knots for the eastern North Gulf Coast with 7-foot seas, and the western North Gulf Coast, northeast 15, and small craft advisories for the Barren Islands, northwest 25 knots, west 30 knots for Kamishak Bay, 8-foot seas, Cook Inlet, light north winds at 10 knots with 2-foot seas. And Wednesday, winds start to come up in response to that front out to the west. East 30 knots, Kamishak Bay, Barren Islands south at 30 knots with 9-foot seas, and southern Cook Inlet northeast at 20. Northern Cook Inlet northeast at 10. Prince William Sound northeast 20 knots, 4-foot seas. North Gulf Coast, west side there, south 25 knots and about 20 knots there for the Middleton Island area. Kodiak Island tomorrow, west winds 20 knots, seas 4 to 7 feet. The Alaska Peninsula northwest 20 to 25 knots. Bristol Bay northwest 25. Sitka to Castle Cape, small craft advisories also northwest 25 knots, seas 8 feet. And for the day on Wednesday, Kodiak Island, east side there, south at 30. Shelikof Strait, east at 25, or east-northeast 25. And then Sitka Castle Cape, south 30 knots, south 30 also for Bristol Bay, south 30 knots, 13-foot seas, Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. And from Cape Sarachev to Castle Cape, southwest gales, 35 knots with 16-foot seas. And for Unalaska Island tomorrow, south to southwest, 25 to 30 knots for small craft advisories, but good gales rolling into the Nikolsky area for Unmak Island, 35 to 40 knots out of the south, and full gales for the central Aleutians, south 45 knots, 19-foot seas. Storm warnings from Kiska to Amchitka, south 50 knots, and then coming down to 45 knots after being storms tonight and most of tomorrow for the far western Aleutians. And then on Wednesday, westerlies, gale force westerlies for the western Aleutians at 40 knots from Amchitka to Shimianatu, and for Adak and Atka about the same, a little bit lighter, 35 to 40 knots out of the west with 19 to 21-foot seas. Unmak Island, west 35 knots, and for Unalaska Island, southwest 30 to 40 knots with 17 to 19-foot seas. Kuskokwim Delta Coast, southwest 20, seas 6 feet. Gales for the Pribilofs in the afternoon, south 35, southeast 35 knots with some storm force winds just to your southwest of St. Matthew Island. Otherwise, Yukon Delta Coast, St. Lawrence Island, southeast at 30 knots. And for Wednesday, St. Lawrence Island, east winds coming down to 40 knots in the afternoon, seas 17 feet. Gales along the southwest coast from the south and southeast at 35 with 13 to 15 foot seas. Small craft advisories for the Pribilof, St. Matthew Island, where winds will be south to southeast 25 to 30 knots. Norton Sound, seeing the winds increase from the southeast at 30. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, north to northwest winds 15 to 20 knots. Strongest toward demarcation point, seas about 4 feet. Light north winds at 10 on the central coast, east at 10 on the west side there, and then from Cape Thompson to Wales, north winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. And for Wednesday, east winds 20 knots for the area from Wales to Cape Thompson, and then Cape Thompson, Cape Beaufort, southeast 15. Western Arctic coast, east at 20. Same thing for the central coast, east at 20. And the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, also east winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. And for tonight, rain continues, light rain will continue for the Panhandle, North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound. Showers of the Copper River Basin of the former rain or snow from the Alaska Range up into the 40-mile country and westward over the central interior. Light snow continues for the North Slope, Brooks Range to the eastern Arctic coast. And storm warnings into the western Aleutians, western Bering tonight as that front pushes eastward with increasing rain. And that all advances and shifts eastward tomorrow. Gale and storm force winds there. With rain heavy at times and rain and wind increasing the Pribilofs, high pressure clearing over the western interior, and then that storm pushes eastward on Wednesday and weakens, but still some pretty good winds and rain coming into the southwest coast, into the Kuskokwim Valley, Kodiak Island, windy and wet.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.